So, I want to return to that theme of the temple. If we're made to worship, that is to say, that because we are theological creatures, because we are, by virtue of our nature, temples of God, intended for the true God to reside within us, because of this, man cannot not worship something. I want you to think about that. I know it's a double negative, but I think it makes the point clearer in the form of a double negative. Men and women, cannot not worship. We must worship. It's our nature. We will worship something. It may not be God, but something. Everybody worships something, if it's not God. Now that is a rather profound statement. And I'd like to unpack it with you just a little bit. All of us set our heart to something. What do we wrap our hearts around in life? What are the things that we're willing to sacrifice for? To serve? To lay ourselves down? Fight for? Go after? Seek, desire, strive? What is in our sight? You know, in the Old Testament, we hear about false gods. And we have, in fact, the very first commandment that deals with it. To have no other gods before him. Now we hear of how, say for example, the Israelites, when they fled Egypt, they took all sorts of jewelry with them, metal, precious metals, gold. And that when Moses was gone too long from their midst, they got a little feisty and decided to whip up a false god. You know, they melted things down, and they made this golden calf. They began to worship it. Now, do you think that they were idiots? I mean, when's the last time you felt a temptation to melt a hunk of metal and to form it into, I don't know, some animal, and then drop down and worship it? Yeah, you probably haven't. It's like the sin you're never going to commit, right? That's just not going to happen. Although as Catholics we get accused of idolatry all the time, which is interesting. They think somehow we believe that the material of a statue is divine, which is bizarre, because we don't, but in any event. It's just not something that we're tempted toward. So is the first commandment the silliest? And if it's so blessed silly, then why is it the first? Or maybe you could say, it was a big problem for them because they were a bunch of idiots. But we're enlightened, so it's not much of a thing for us. All those are wrong answers. They weren't idiots. You know what those false gods represented? All the things that our modern false gods represent. Lust, greed, envy, pride, anger, sloth, gluttony. The deadly sins are a menagerie of false deities. Things that people set their sight on. They place on the altar of their heart and they will strive for. Vanity, very popular today. Romantic love, believe it or not, a false sense of it, is a very popular idol. It's on sale all the time. Particularly in movies. You know, the couple falls in love and it leaves everybody walking out of the movie theater thinking they have the perfect life and feeling a little bit horrible about yourself because it's not mine. Well, it doesn't end that way. They don't stay young forever. They end up having kids, and you know how that goes. You know, I mean, let's fill in the blanks, folks. But they'll polish that false deity up all day long and sell it on sale, 2 for 1. There are false deities worshipped every day. And indeed, I would argue that for all of us, it characterizes the drama of our Christian life. This is where our drama lies. Think about it for yourselves. Think about your own life. Think about how many times other things have seemed almost more important than God. Or indeed, flat out more important. Oftentimes in our youth, right? We kind of set God aside. Yeah. He's always there, he always loves me, blah, blah, blah. I'm going after this. I'm going after that. And of course, we'll do crazy things. I mean, people will spend 2 hours in a gym a day, just to looking the way they want to look so they can get what they want to get. And sometimes it's not all about lust. I mean, lust is a part of it. That's a very popular deity, but false deity, by the way. And but also sometimes it's about the romantic love, right? And that's another way to achieve that end. And then people will go after all sorts of pursuits. Sometimes education is not for the sake of knowledge. Sometimes people go after it voraciously for the pursuit of money, power. And then there are others who pursue, in various ways, lives of sloth and gluttony, doing the littlest thing, just the smallest amount, to get what I not want or I need. Or a gluttonous consumption of our senses. And then typically what happens, we get a taste of what we're going after, what we want, what we've idolized, what we've put up on a pedestal on the altar of our heart. We get some of it. And invariably, after a period of time, if not almost instantly, we feel empty. Is that all? Is that as good as it all gets? That's it? And sometimes, if we're lucky, we turn our eyes heavenward and we say, it can't be it. There's got to be more. And we search and pray God that we find our way, respond to the gift of faith that is offered, and we receive it and we see Him, who is the one our heart hungers for. The true God made flesh in the person of Christ, who will consecrate our temples, take His place on the altar of our heart. For true adoration, that for which we are made, can take place. Now let's contrast the difference between worshiping a false God and the one true God, who is made flesh in the person of Christ. A false God promises what it cannot deliver. It is a lie. It is, in the first predicate, false. But God, by contrast, is truth, the way, and the life. A false God has the appearance of glamour and excitement and pleasure. A very seductive appearance. I mean, this is why people do go after it, right? I mean, we don't go after things, we don't worship things, we don't seek things unless there's something that they can give us that we want. Now, maybe your bag of sins is not necessarily my bag of sins, or that bag. We all have different tastes, but suffice it to say, there's something that it's going to give us that we want. It has the appearance, a seductive appearance to give life, but only brings death. A true God, the true God, he has the appearance of death that gives way to life. It is through the Paschal mystery of death and dying to self that we can find true life. A false God will consume us endlessly. The true God gives himself to be consumed most profoundly and most beautifully in the Most Holy Eucharist. In the end, we will all choose who and what our temples will be dedicated to. And there will be those in which are placed the presence of the true God on the altar. And then there will be those who have wrapped their hearts around one of his competitors. One is itself damning. It is a hell unto itself. An always being consumed eternally. A hunger never satisfied. A longing never fulfilled. Whereas the other is the purification of self to be made one with the true God, where true life and happiness will be found. A place of love. Now the truth is, as we make our way through this life, we often wrestle with these competitors, these false gods. Sometimes we sin just of weakness. I was tired and I just got cranky and I, snapped at someone. I wasn't really thinking, I wasn't on my guard, just kind of weakness. Those sins are rather easy to confess because we know they don't really own us. It's just human weakness. We just know they don't really own us. They don't really have a claim on the heart. But there are a category of sins, and everyone has their badge. Most everyone. I don't want to leave open the possibility that there are some beautifully saintly souls that we've come to know in the life of the church that only struggle with occasional weaknesses. But many, 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 many people, the majority, struggle with these competitors, these false deities, these deadly sins. And it's not that we want to, because we place Christ, we place God in the altar of our hearts, but this thing, it still sits there alongside it. And sometimes gets the best of us. And this is a long process, usually, barring a miracle, of purifying of our temple. This is the long process of dying to self, of sinning, recognizing our fault and our weakness, and the fact that it may be deeply rooted within us, because it may be attached to that which competes with God on the altar of our heart, and we repent. We say to the one true God, I'm sorry. And we can say it till we're blue in the face, we often do. And we can say, I don't want to do it again. But oftentimes we'll say, I wouldn't bet on it. I'm not a safe bet. I know myself for years. In fact, I've known myself my whole life. Don't bet on me. Okay. But what do? You do as Christ modeled. You pick yourself up and you start again. And over the long haul, this long via crucis in your life, the way of the cross, this false god weakens. But it will flare up every now and then. It will have its moments. But if we can't get rid of it with one fell swoop, we can put it on a type of chemotherapy. A long fight of strangling it, denying it, dressing it, and appealing to the one true God with all of our might and with contrition and sorrow, especially for the sins that have kept this thing alive or that facilitated keeping it alive. Because in truth, as I said, false gods are